participate and do the work. What do you guys think?
I have to admit, I don't fully understand why the meetings can't be virtual.
Yeah.
I don't get the law behind that. There is one. I don't understand it. Maybe someone else smarter than me can explain to me, but I don't know.
Well, overall, Stephen, that's an issue that the county has with Virginia law. It has nothing to do with the commissions itself, as far as I know, and for what it's been explained to me by other staff members from other commissions.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we know that. But what's the rationale behind the law that requires us all to be here together so we can hold hands?
Well,
When
the law was created, there was probably no virtual option that was theoretical, so it didn't contemplate that. And, once they reopened whether to make it something virtual, there's the opportunity to put all this other stuff in it. So it makes sense to allow a permanent virtual option, but doesn't mean that it's an easy thing to accomplish.
I think they made it more complicated than what it has to be.
Yeah. I wonder if there's a way to are we required to have?
Hi, how are you? How are you? Where should I sit? Here?
Anywhere, yeah. Okay. How are you doing?
I am. Yeah, had a lot to do because of the incident next week.
Is that part of your, because you're head of a nonprofit, right? Are you guys working in that space?
I'm on the board of a number of interfaith nonprofits and also chair caucus on interfaith outreach. So yeah.
Are your groups working to try to get aid and trying to deploy folks over there, or more thinking through potential consequences state-bound?
Every group is at a different stage of the process, but I would say that for the most part, I think we're just trying to figure out what the consequences might be and trying to work around those to, support the most peaceful outcome possible. So. Oh yeah. Yeah, but I'm encouraged by the fact that there are a lot of groups that are coming together, and that's really my function is to bring people together around these issues and come to arrive at common ground. Are we waiting at?
We are, yeah. We don't
Okay.
have quorum in the room yet, so we'll give it another minute or two. Hi, Chris, how are you? Chris, you might be on mute.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Good evening, everyone.
Hey,
How are you?
Chris.
How are the dogs?
They're good. They're getting, we picked up for a home visit, or I picked up for a home visit, a second dog from the Arlington rescue. And we're seeing if they mesh with my current dog. So everyone's getting used to each other. It's a bit loud right now.
Are you adopting some dogs right now?
I have one current dog, and I'm in the process of adopting a second if this visit goes well. So that is what we are monitoring today. So forgive me for not being with you all.
Well,
Well, too early to-
congratulations
Thank you.
on the new addition to the family, or soon to be.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But yeah, good evening.
Good luck. Okay, well, let's get going, and I'll take it out of order since we do have a critical mass here. We do not have quorum in the room, right? We need one more person, so we'll defer. Can you guys hear me fine on Teams? So we'll defer on approving minutes, but Fatima, what we're talking about is top of mind for me. And what I was thinking about in coming here today and opening the meeting, I think what we have all been seeing on our TVs every day, for me, was a stark reminder as to why we do this work, right? I mean, for me, I've gotten so lost in the details of the ordinance and the minutia of this and the details of meeting policies. But when you zoom out and you think about big picture, it's about us being part of a community, right?
Yeah.
That wants to protect against the sorts of atrocities we're seeing on the news hour to hour. And it actually, hi Roland, how are you? It actually sort of reinvigorates me in the work that we're doing, right? When we think about the community that we want to have.
Sorry, Roland, I just,
Oh, no, that's fine.
so I should just, I guess I'll just keep it there. Yeah, I know, it's just been so heart-wrenching, because I know people on many sides who have been affected, not just the Israelis. I don't know if you know, but I used to co-moderate a peace symposium series, and which I did during the pandemic for 2 years. My co-moderator and counterpart is an Israeli guy, and much more active on his end than I am. But so I reached out to him and, to see how he was doing, how his family was, whether they were safe and they were okay. He knew several people obviously who had been affected, who had been killed, kidnapped, whatever. On the other side, I also know Palestinians. I know people who have been affected. I have friends here who have family there. I have one friend whose husband just found out this morning that the village that he comes from in Gaza got completely destroyed. They haven't heard from any family members. So, this is a tragedy that has a much wider, circle of influence than I think a lot of people imagine. And, it's very hard for people to imagine this level of intensity and impact. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. I think for Carol and for Roland's sake, I started the meeting by talking about what's happened over the past few days that we're watching on our news hour to hour, and how for me it was a stark reminder of the importance of the work that we are doing together. We're united as volunteers in this work, designed to protect at least the people in our community against this sort of discrimination and hatred on the basis of religion or national origin or whatever it is. And so I was remarking, and Fatima was sharing her experiences, that it reinvigorates me in the work that we're doing. It gives me more energy to continue to do this work, even though sometimes we get bogged down in the minutiae. So I really just wanted to kick off the call just in recognition of the moment that we're all living in, and greatest respect for the victims on all sides, and anchor on it as a call to action for what we're all doing, why we're all here.
Yeah.
Wanted to comment on that as well. I heard a commentator when I was coming over here that said that most in the American Jewish community feel one degree of separation from what's happening. And I think that that's true. I don't have a lot of Israeli cousins, but my brother-in-law's nephews have all been called up from the reserves, so they're likely to face peril. The daughter of very good friends of ours was supposed to be at that concert. She, for some reason, didn't go and landed in JFK this morning, but it really is that kind of thing. But more close to home, and I think that this impacts both sides, Jewish sites in this country are feeling as if they could be under attack from probably not Hamas, but sympathizers for Hamas right here. And I suspect that many Muslim organizations are also feeling the threat that people have or will respond. I haven't heard of anything in Northern Virginia, but and I haven't heard of increased police presence, but that could be the case. So it really is hitting closer to home than anything else that I've experienced in 25 years of professional work in this area and a lifetime of being involved too.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think we tried to be cognizant of that, we just put out a statement, in fact, on behalf of Arlington Dems, and we wanted to make sure that the Jewish community in particular, but really all faith communities, because, there's also the probability that that Muslim communities will be affected as well. But we wanted to make sure that our statement reflected, our standing in solidarity. So,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it's.
And we all remember in this country kind of what the Muslim community faced after 9/11. So.
Right, exactly, yeah. And, the sad thing about it is that, in this day and age, for some reason, we could look at a lot of factors, but the level of hate has risen. I mean, there are numbers to substantiate this. And, yeah, the Jewish community is definitely at the top of the list, but the American Muslim community is not too far behind, sadly. But it's something that we have to keep in mind, I think.
And before we move on to sort of more the business of tonight, I just want to give folks an opportunity to share if they are so inclined. It is so tremendous the work you do on this commission. I echo Fatima, Stefan, thank you for sharing your perspective, Fatima, for sharing yours. But if anybody else wants to share anything, or observations or thoughts on the Nexus.
I think most my grandmother was in a concentration camp. She was a Christian resistance fighter and spent 3.5 years at Ravensbrück concentration camp. And she always said she would do it all over again because it was the right thing to do. And it just makes me so sad that so many years later, the Jewish community is still facing this type of persecution. But I was very heartwarmed by the fact that the Germans were one of the first countries to respond and send aid, because it's still a healing process for people. There's still people alive, like my mom, who went through this in World War II and went 3.5 years not knowing if her mother was dead or alive, and had been part of the resistance herself. So it's there's a measure of healing to see that Germany has tried to overcome its past and is stepping in, and that gives me hope that we can come to some type of resolution, some type of peace. But it's very heartbreaking to see that these types of actions are still taking place against a persecuted race.
Yeah, no, it's definitely disheartening. What's I guess a lot of people are in particular apprehensive about is what the next steps are going to be, and sadly violence is being met with violence. And I think the hope was, and being a part of numerous peacemaking and interfaith groups, the hope was that possibly, not realistically, that there would be some sort of peaceful response, but there wasn't. So hopefully that will happen in turn, because the long-term solution is not this back and forth. Yeah.
Anybody else want to share or talk about it further, connected to our work? Just want to give us a space to do it.
Thank you for making the space. It's an important time, and for us to it's an important point in time, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm exhausted. I've been talking all day. It's an important point in time where I think we need to sit and reflect and act with cool heads going forward.
And to your point about healing, right? None of us are going to solve single-handedly what's going on in the Middle East, and has been for I don't even know how many years, but we can all anchor on these types of things and do our part. And encouraged to be in this room today.
And I think giving support to one another is really critical. I think it's important for everyone to know that no matter who they are, where they come from, whatever, that that they are supported. they belong, they're part of this community.
Right. Okay, well, thank you all for sharing and for listening and for making space on that. We have quorum in the room. Thank you all for being here. So we'll call officially the meeting to order. I have a few, moving to chair update on the agenda. I have a few items I want to talk about and really open for discussion. The first, let me give you all an update on where we are with the ordinance. We have, just as a level set, just to remind everybody where we are, we have two bifurcated pieces of the ordinance. First one, I think it was in roughly March or April, I can't remember the precise time, but we sent up our markup to the board, adding jurisdictionally schools under the scope of our ordinance. I followed up a few times. Gurjeet said to me today that her understanding is one of the board members is going to be reaching out to me to discuss it. It literally doesn't mean they have passed it. There's, some iteration that's going to be going on. So that's at least being thought about at the board level. So that's the first piece. The second piece, as you will remember, is the more fulsome markup to the ordinance that took on, just sort of bringing it current, taking out words like handicap and replacing it with disability, and a whole suite of other modifications and amendments. We have been iterating, particularly at the drafting committee level with the county attorney's office, Virginia Sadler. She's actually been very, very helpful in this exercise and trading red lines with us and giving thoughtful comments to try to eliminate the drafting cycles. We had a couple of emails exchanged on some of the drafting points, and she gave us a response on that earlier this week. I have shared that with the folks in the room and online who are part of the drafting committee. And I think we'll look to have a regroup, which we'll notice in accordance with the rules, but at the drafting committee level, and figure out what the next steps are. It occurs to me that there will probably be a distillation of what the policy issues are, both on schools as well as on the broader package. And that when one of the board members, whomever it is, reaches out to talk about it, this will be our opportunity to make the case for all of it, right? And so I just want to be really thoughtful at the board, at the drafting committee level, on how we're going to approach that and how we're going to do that. But that is in kind of full focus at CAO, County Attorney's Office, as well as at the board level. So progress, not resolution or completion, but progress on the ordinance front. So that's the update there. Any questions, comments on ordinance before I move on? Yeah.
I just have a comment because, I find out on Newsbreak that there's this issue with the female firefighters being sexually harassed. Those are the types of things that, we're trying to make a change with these changes to the ordinance to give people a safe place to come to. The fire department shouldn't have to say, we're going to give you a $10,000 reward to anyone with information on this. So I think it's timely, and I think we really need to jump on things like that. So it's a horrible thing that's happening to the women in the fire department, but to use it to underscore what we're trying to do. And just as an aside, I'm excited you have someone who wants to meet with you on it, and I hope it's Tanya, who's now served on both the county board and the school committee. And I think she would provide a lot of insight as a recent school board member. So I'm very heartened after all these years that we've been trying to get this ordinance through, that maybe we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. On what you have seen, I have not seen that on the sexual harassment of firefighters. Would you share that with me as an action
I
item?
was going to bring that up, and I think
Okay.
simply because I have an issue with that maybe it might be good to get this out of the way regarding the legislation, and then go back to that, because there's a lot more involved.
Okay. Do you want to give us the update on it? Because it's germane to this portion of the conversation. So why don't you take a
Well,
look at it?
it's my understanding that there has been a letter which has been sent by over 30 women in the fire department. And the letter has been sent to county board members and also, I think, to the county manager. And in the letter, they talk about harassment. They talk about the fact that some of them do not feel safe. They talk about the fact that they have, and this is what I was going to bring up because I think we should know about this. They talk about the fact that they have filed charges and they have not been satisfied pretty much with how those charges have been treated. And that was something I was going to ask the vice chair, simply because the vice chair has authority over the EEO standing committee, which would be something like this. If you had a group that you had citizens and employees, then maybe something like this would have come up. Because this is something that I have never known to happen, because 30 women, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And for them to say that they have suffered this over years, this is not something that just happened, but this is something that has happened over years. It's something that I am just completely dumbfounded as to why the commission hasn't heard about it.
Is the letter public?
The letter, I don't know whether the letter is public. Certainly, it has been leaked.
Yeah.
And I think that is how people hear about it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we have looked at in the past has been the fire department. We've been very much concerned with the fire department and the fire department's treatment of women and lack of women pretty much in the fire department. I thought that in recent years, looking at their recruitment and everything, that pretty much has been dealt with in a very favorable way. But to then hear about something like this it's pretty annoying because according to the letter, the women actually say that they feel that their lives are in danger. So that's why I think it's something that we really should be looking into.
Do they indicate where they filed the charges? I imagine these are EEOC claims with their sexual harassment allegations.
Yeah, they indicate they filed it with the Office of EEO and Human Affairs. Human
So it's
Rights.
internal now. They haven't actually.
Well, we don't know. We don't know.
Okay.
We don't get those stats.
We don't get this. And to be completely honest with you, the standing committee hasn't really met to obtain it. But that was something actually I was going to ask Gertrude about. But I just don't know. But they do claim that they did file charges. And I don't know how many charges they filed. I don't know what's the status of those charges. What I do know from the letter is there's been great dissatisfaction with how those things are being handled.
Yeah. And Roland, so yes, I agree with you. I think the EEO Standing Committee has purview over asking the right questions. I think more broadly, we can think about if it's a pending matter, nobody's going to talk to us about it right now. But at the appropriate time, talking to the fire department and understanding what's going on there from a cultural perspective, what sort of training is going on, how are they managing things so that we can provide oversight within our purview. But talk to me about your thinking around sequencing on the ordinance, because I think what you were saying before is it behooves us to try to deal with the ordinance first before we tackle this,
Right.
instead of the inverse.
Right. With the ordinance, I wonder whether or not the jurisdictional question is going to hold up consideration of what I consider to be just cleaning up of the statute. Because a lot of that we have posed is just cleaning the statute and putting it in line with current statutory language. And there are certain things in there, such as bringing contractors in line with the standard requirements. And I really don't think people have a question pretty much regarding, but I'm just wondering the manner in which it's going to go to the board. Do we consider the fact that we send it to the attorney, that it is now before the board?
No,
and that
it's
not.
Now, there's one where we jurisdictionally added schools,
Right.
has gone to the board under our letterhead with our advocacy piece. months ago.
So that's pending with them.
That's pending with the board.
Okay.
The other one is with CAO, so that we can avoid any of their edits and distill it down to what are the policy issues in county workforce is a policy issue that we're gonna have to advocate.
And do we anticipate, since this is October, and then we have November and then December, and the fact that come January 1st, there's going to be a new county board with 2 new board members, do we anticipate that there now is going to be, and that matter probably will still be pending before the board, is that going to pose a problem, or does the board anticipate, to the best of your knowledge, getting a decision on this done while they still have the present board?
I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that, although Gurjit and Anna, feel free to give any more color you might have on this. But Gurjit's email said that she understood that it was Christian Dorsey who was our liaison, who wants to sit down and discuss it with us.
Because the present board, the new board member, as you all know, is a former member of the school board. So I don't know whether she would want to have a say, or she has feelings over it. If something goes up as the, right there before the board, then my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong in this particular case, because it could be, is that the staff reviews it, which would be the county attorney, and then they would make a recommendation to the board that pretty much goes with the request.
Correct,
and do we
that
think that's gonna be
process. I
good?
think that's the
Now,
process.
do we, if they disagree with something, does that mean then that it never goes to the board? Or does something goes to the board with a staff recommendation that is, we don't necessarily agree that the board should adopt this? Because in this particular case, I mean, this is something very, very important. And so I don't know whether that's going to be the case with that. If it is, is there any way we can find out about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what needs to happen is I need to have the conversation with Christian Dorsey
Yeah.
to figure out what the status of it is. On the first piece, adding schools jurisdictionally,
Mhm.
I don't see that as requiring an extensive cycle with CAO, right? That is a policy decision for the board to decide whether or not they are willing to do it.
Right.
I don't know, I mean, it's not a Dillon rule issue, we looked at it, so I don't know how that's
I
a
agree with
legal
you.
opinion. Very light touch on the drafting,
Yeah.
right? So I don't really
Yeah.
think it's a wordsmithing issue. So I think it's subject to debate and discussion at the board level, right?
Right. And I think if we can push that forward,
Yeah.
that would be great, because that is very important. And then the other bit, I'm assuming, because of all of the conversations that we have with Jenny, see, even though technically it's not up before the board, I think the fact that we've had so many discussions with her says that, in a way, it is before the board, because they are the board's attorneys. So therefore, if we're in negotiations with them, it's not really negotiations. If we're in discussions pretty much with them regarding this, and Jenny, who has been extremely helpful on this whole thing, and very, very, I think, willing to listen to, and has listened to pretty much to our suggestions and stuff. I kind of think that if, when we finish with this with her, that this is something that pretty much is going to be recommended for immediate adoption by the board.
Yes and no. I think how it's likely to go when we finish the cycle with Jenny, based
Yeah.
upon the email that just came out,
Mhm.
is I think we're gonna have the ability to say, we worked extensively with CAO's office to resolve some of their legal concerns around the drafting, and we've iterated with them. We've gotten it as far as we can. But I do think that CAO is gonna say, there are 3 or 4 issues in here that we can't opine on, like inclusion of county workforce, jurisdictionally in the scope of our coverage, and there's 2 or 3 other policy issues. If anybody has them top of mind, feel free to get I don't have my email.
But the ones that they don't want to opine on it is fine. You don't think that there are going to be any that they're going to say, we strongly disagree, and it's because I haven't seen any of this recent stuff, but a year ago, whenever it was brought to us, they disagreed with a lot of this stuff that was
Yeah,
in there.
but I think a year ago, that was that was my view, is that wasn't a very fulsome,
Okay,
prepared.
but you're in a place that forgetting the policy stuff, the non-policy stuff, they're mostly going to be in line with us?
I think they have already gone on record expressing the areas of concern and or objection they had with the non-policy areas. And I think we've reached a place of resolution
Okay.
with our iteration on drafting.
Okay.
So no, with respect to that basket, I would be very surprised if CAO said, let's block it on this basis, since they served up Ginny to go through that exercise with us. Now, with respect to the various policy issues that remain, whether or not schools and county workforce and a handful of other source of funds, right, is a protected characteristic, and we've sort of expanded that in a couple of places, particularly as it relates to commercial real estate context and stuff. It's very, very kind of nuanced changes that basically CAO is saying, well, it's not a Dillon issue, there's not a legal issue here, but it's a question for the board as to whether they would be willing to do that within their legislative priority. We can't speak to that. So I would hope, right, that we would have a package that's ready to go to the board that says, we have taken this as far as we can with CAO, right? None of those issues, so that shouldn't be a roadblock. You have XYZ policy issues to confront, and here is why we recommend you make them per our recommendation, because we think this is important for our community. So another advocacy piece like what we did in the schools. That's the process I'm envisioning. But I think using the outreach with Christian or whomever wants to talk to us as an opportunity to have a dialogue and do some of that advocacy before the written piece goes out will, one, give us insight into where it is to answer those questions. And two, set the table a little bit for our written piece that's to come.
And also, I think it may be a disadvantage for us, and in some instances it may be an advantage for us, is that Kristen is only going to be a board member for at least October, November, December, 3 more months.
Yeah.
So, and we don't know who's going to be the board liaison next year. So it is to our advantage, I think, to get that
Push through.
push through
Agreed.
pretty much while we can. But again, I come back to the form in which it's going to go up there to the board, because if the county attorney disagrees, and obviously they do with those about 4 areas that we're talking about, the question I have is, what's going to be the recommendation that actually goes up there? Is it going to be a recommendation in which they have deleted the 4 things, which I tend to think it is, and they say, we just do this, this, and this, and then what happens to the 4 things that are sitting here? Do they notify, they being the county attorney, do they notify us that that document that we pretty much agreed upon, we sent this up there and we didn't include this? And if they did do that, then what's going to be our avenue?
Yeah,
What are
I
we going to
think our
do?
process might be a little bit different. The way I'm envisioning our process is we close the loop with Ginny, right? And we have to, as the drafting committee, we all need to roll up our sleeves and do that,
Okay.
right? But we then close the loop with Ginny and say, thank you for all your inputs. We understand. Can you please confirm that you have no other edits beyond the 4 policy issues, correct? She'll say correct, hopefully, right? Then we take it, and we take it with the 4 policy issues as we recommend it, and we're going to submit it to the board directly under our cover. And we're going to say, we have worked this through with CAO. They're signed off on everything other than the 4 policy issues. We understand they're deferring to you on that. We are recommending to you as the HRC that you pass this as drafted with these 4 issues in place for these reasons. And then we're going to have to build out those reasons very carefully, right?
And you're not expecting them to say, we disagree with these 4 policy issues as much as this is in your jurisdiction. We've gone through the traps. We don't have a disagreement with them. We just don't think you have to make a decision.
Yeah, I don't have any indication
All right.
from the exchanges and you know, Stephen, Chris, Roland, anybody else who's been on those calls with Ginny. I don't have an indication that they're going to object, because the posture to us has been, it's not my bailiwick. That's a policy issue for you guys to deal with. I don't, however, know what that process looks like between CAO
And her boss is not going to weigh in
So
at some point?
She's been, as I understand it,
Been CC'd or
she's
whatever?
been delegated.
Okay.
Helen, it's been a while since I was included on one of those calls, but I know I clearly recall when I was on vacation in Hawaii and I took the call because I thought it was important enough to take time out of my vacation to be on the call. I pointed out to to her that other jurisdictions cover their employees, and I think we need to emphasize that. That's a real strong suit. You know, we're not asking for something that is unprecedented. Alexandria covers their workforce, and we like to compare ourselves to Alexandria. Alexandria's always a step ahead of us, so we're playing catch up here. We're not even proposing anything that's you know, first in the Commonwealth, unfortunately, which we should be, and maybe would have been if we got this through 4 or 5 years ago when we started drafting on it. But I'm happy to look at that. The HRC is having their conference. They changed the date. I'm not able to go. The weekend of the October 21st, 22nd, 23rd. I don't know if Brigitte is going. She hasn't gone in the past, but I can certainly bring it to the attention for a topic and see if we can't get some feedback from the other jurisdictions in the Commonwealth to see how they address it.
That would be great,
Policy
Carol,
issues.
if you could do that and give the drafting committee a readout, because that might give us some really dynamite pieces to use for our advocacy. I think the point that you just made is exactly what we included in our letter that went to them on schools, right? Because we pointed that out, and we said this would not be unique. I believe it was
Right.
Alexandria who found the reference, right?
Right.
So to the extent we can point to that on county or city, as it were, workforce being encompassed jurisdictionally, it could be germane here too.
Yeah.
So
Howard,
if
I just want to relay to you what happened when we did the changes to the statute, where we requested that it be amended to include gender identity.
Yeah.
Which was a very, very simple thing, simply because even though we had made the request well before, we had made the request and other municipalities had done it, it kind of went up there and stayed there for well over a year, there being the board, up there with the county attorney for well over a year and a half. And even though it was something very, very simple. And it was only after the state had amended its human rights statute to include gender identity, and we then came back to the board after they'd been sitting there for a year and a half. And even though Alexandria had done it, Falls Church had done it, everyone else around us had done it, they still hadn't done it. But when the state did its amendment, we went back to the board and said, well, there isn't an excuse for you to sit on this. And for several months, they did sit on it. And we then got back, we had to be very persistent with them in doing that. But when it came up to the board finally, it didn't come up as something from the commission. It came up as something from the staff to the county board. And I was a little upset about that because of what we had done. It came from the county attorney, but Katie I talked to Katie, and there was some sort of status that she gave me. I don't exactly remember what it was. I have to go back and just sort of check things. And because of the status that she gave me, I was allowed to speak on behalf of that at the meeting. Because normally when something comes up to them from the county attorney like that, they don't entertain, we can't speak on it, even though the commission was the one that proposed it. So I say that to say, if there are going to be these other like policy things, which are not going to be included in there, at some place we've got to
Get
see
into
if,
the process.
yeah.
Yeah.
you have to talk to me, see if there's some way that you can get in the
Yeah,
process.
super
So-
helpful.
Yeah, so that you can make your positions or the position of the commission known to, it really is going to be known to the public because the staff would have distributed all that to the.
So
board
you
members.
testified in public forum in an open board
Yes,
session where
yes.
this was deliberated.
Yes,
and
if you-
Katie
if-
got you on the docket.
Yes, if you go back and you review the YouTube from that, I was actually allowed to speak pretty much on behalf of that. And that, I think that was because it originated with us, or it has something to do with my involvement someplace in the process, that they pretty much allowed me to do that. We want to make sure that you, as the chair of the commission, are allowed to pretty much speak on that.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah,
board
that's
meeting,
helpful.
not as the 2 minutes that they give employee, 2 minutes they give the public at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah.
but you're allowed to actually speak when that thing comes up before the board.
One question for that's really helpful insight on prior process here. The issue that held up gender identity, right? We're waiting to see if the state is going to act. Does anybody know if the Virginia Human Rights Act covers public employees of the state in its purview? Because that's the analogy to me, right? If, in other words, if the state has already said this act that any Virginian
Right.
can use is
Right.
also going to be available for our state Commonwealth employees. Isn't the analogy exactly the same?
Sure.
I'm just
Well,
looking up,
no,
what
no,
is
no,
it that,
it doesn't deal with that. It deals with who you can go to in order just to regress grievances or to seek your rights.
Sure.
Because if it's in the state ordinance, then I think the position is you go to, what is it the Attorney General, or you go to a state level.
But it's the same point though, right?
Right,
Because
but
we
if it's,
have our
if it's in the
emergency-
county ordinance, you can come to the office.
was the question to which entity, you know?
Whether the Virginia Human Rights Act,
Mhm.
the state law that covers the same subject
Right.
matter largely of our
Right.
ordinance, whether it permits a state employee,
Uh-huh.
Oh, a state employee, I don't know.
The
That's-
state
that's what I'm saying.
employee,
that I'm making the analogy, right? Because what you were saying, our board was timid to act
Yeah.
unless something comparable was happening at the state level.
Right.
That's already on the books in the state level.
Right.
That's the argument.
Yeah, that's the kind of like Dylan
Exactly.
mentality, Dylan rule mentality that pretty much exists here. But even after the state passed it, it still didn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
You still had to be very, very persistent in making sure that they did it.
But it's posted at level one, which I find interesting. Our ordinance isn't posted there, but the state.
so the question is whether an employee can, I didn't get the
Whether an
rest.
employee of the Commonwealth
Uh-huh.
can bring a claim under the Virginia Human Rights Act, which is the
Oh.
state law, right? So that's at the state level.
Mhm.
We're here at the locality level.
Oh, I see.
And what Roland is saying is, we're not making any changes here unless the state's done it too. If the
Got
state's
it.
already
Yeah,
done
because
that,
it would set the precedent for us,
Yeah.
yeah.
and we'd have the ability to argue that in inverse of Dylan, to say,
Yeah.
not only is it not a Dylan issue, you're behind, you need to catch up,
I don't think it's there.
no? All right.
So while I think it would be great if this could be done this year, particularly why Kristen is our liaison, I'm a little dubious about that timing. But I wonder while Tanya is on the board, we could somehow get to her to encourage that the piece that they already have gets acted on this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know if someone has a relationship with her.
Do you, Carol?
I do, yeah. We got along very well with her.
Yeah.
And I think she'd be very excited to be part of it because she only has a finite time on the board. She's not planning on running for the board, at least for 2 years. She's still very much committed to working for Senator Warner, but in her capacity as Senator Warner, she does outreach. So this would be very much in line with the type of work that she's actually doing for the senators. I think she'd be very excited
Yeah.
to move this through. And what I was looking for here in my email, somewhere way back in the day, just to remind everyone that when we started working on the updates to the ordinance, it was with Christian's blessings, because I had brought to his attention, we have this ordinance, and he still used the word handicap, and he said, go forward with my blessing.
Do you have that in email?
That's what I'm looking for. I throw very few away, so hopefully I have it. I'm looking for it. I'm
So
looking
Carol,
for it
can
now.
you take those 3 items, can we think about you engaging with Tanya even casually and informally first?
Sure.
On step 1, schools.
Mhm.
Because you're right, if we can leverage that relationship to push that to the fore before the end of the year, while we work on the other stream parallel, that'd be great. So that's 1. 2, when you go to the HRC in a week or 2, whatever feedback you might be able to gather
Mhm.
from other jurisdictions about their processes that we could use and leverage would be great. And then 3, if you have a written email saying, let me support this work stream, I'd love to have that, just so that we can know.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if I don't have it, but it's just probably going to take me a while to find it.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to follow up with Christian? He just sent me some like congratulations for your reappointment.
Yes,
I'll just
please.
send an email saying, hey, what about
Yeah.
this? Been since
Yeah.
March or April?
Yeah, I think, a lot of outreach, and then we'll be very methodical in doing it on behalf of the HRC. But I do think to the drafting committee in the room, I think I have an email out to you guys with Ginny's stuff. Let's all take the action item to propose some dates over the next 2 weeks so that we can all kind of knuckle down and move this forward. And we're going to need to notice it, right? And post it. So we just need to get on that so we get it on the books. Okay. So, so great stuff, guys. Thank you for all the feedback on the ordinance work stream. This feels like really good progress and a good roadmap for more progress. So stay tuned on that one. And we'll report back to the broader group next month once we do some work at the committee level. Okay, next topic on my agenda is what we want to do. I really do want to open this up for discussion. What we want to do, if anything, by way of making recommendations to HR based on what we heard in September, right? Here are my I'll start it. Here are my distilled takeaways from what we heard. I mean, I was encouraged to hear 2 things. There is some intentionality happening in implementing the results of the barrier analysis and the affirmative action plan. I was really glad to see it. There was a good, robust discussion on how they're increasing access to training and they're making strides. I'm delighted to hear it. What I didn't hear and what I think they need to do is we have not heard about the creation of a steering committee to help implement the recommendations from the affirmative action plan vendor. I think they need to do that, and I think we should remind them that they need to do it. It doesn't sound like the HR department has leveraged available consulting hours from the affirmative action plan vendor. In June, when we heard from Tamara, she talked about how there were hours available to HR that they had not capitalized on. We reminded them of that during the meeting in September. I want to make sure that they're doing it so that we can see progress on some of these issues, especially hearing, Roland, what you're telling me about the letter from the female firefighters. And then I just wasn't so sure that they had a very good and intentional process on tracking meaningful outreach in their recruiting activities. So those were my 3 takeaways that I think we need to make sure this body is recommending to HR. Does anybody else have anything that sort of stood out to them or anything that you guys think we should be doing here?
So I didn't participate in the meeting last month, so I don't have that information, but do they, given what the report was to us and presumably a report to them, do they have a plan for what they hope to accomplish for the next year? Like, here are our priorities in terms of this? Softly. I mean, I didn't hear it distilled down as crisply as that, and so sort of peppered throughout. And let me just pin that for 1 second. And I know we don't have a recording of it because it wasn't a proper meeting because we didn't have quorum, but we did record it. Is there a way in which we can obtain the recording so we can see?
I checked on that today, and this is my fault. We switched rooms, and it didn't get recorded when we switched rooms.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
So I don't have it.
Okay, so so the answer is yes. They talked in very high level detail of what they're working on and what they intend to continue to work on. But they didn't distill it to my ear, and Stephen, I know you were in the room with me as well. They didn't distill it to my ear to say, like, here are our top 5 priorities. And there were a lot of moments during that meeting where we said things like, what are you doing here? We need you to do X, Y, Z. And a lot around those 3 takeaways that I had, right, that we recommended in real time.
I mean, maybe one of the recommendations is there's a lot in this report. There's a lot of tweaking that could be done. We think that you should actually figure out over what your real top goals are for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
So my takeaway from that meeting was they were talking a lot about things they were starting to do, and honestly, as an HR professional, I was a little bit stunned. I retired from the government over 10 years ago, and they were talking about starting to do things that were commonplace 20 years ago when I was in HR. So it's nice that they're doing some things, but clearly they're coming from behind. I also really didn't hear them speak about some of the retention issues, which is where you get into concerns about disparate treatment of employees for infractions, which is very similar to the types of issues that Whitney has been particularly vocal about with the schools. Students are being treated differently, so it would be helpful to get that type of information. And I know when we were meeting with the EEO advisory, I know that I had asked for that when Katie Crystal was our liaison, so that's been, what, 4 or 5 years at least. So, you know, I think that's where we do have an impact. As you say, Roland, if we have these meetings, as we say in our ordinance, we're going to have 2 to 3 a year, that's a good starting place for us. So, you know, we need to hold our own feet to the fire, quite honestly, in terms of asking for some of that information, because I was pleased with what he had to say. It's like, yes, that sounds like they're doing the right things, but also feeling like there are other areas that could be more innovative, or these are things that should have been happening all along. It shouldn't be like we started this particular program.
Can you give some examples on that, that you think that they should have been doing all along?
Well, they were just talking about, you know, where they were going for recruit, and it's not clear on the top of my head, because I honestly assumed that there was going to be a video that we could go back to, so I didn't take notes while I was listening in the meeting as I normally would. But just in terms of going to diverse places, like for example, when I was in the federal government, we would go to historically Black colleges and universities routinely. That is what we did. We would advertise in diverse newspapers. We would advertise on the radio, and especially with media, there's just a lot of opportunity to do these things that is not happening. You can go on Facebook, you can go on LinkedIn. There's just so many social media places where you can go to reach out to a diverse workplace, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a workplace related site to let people know, hey, this is Arlington County and this is what we stand for. I know.
And that's kind of the targeted meaningful outreach, and that's
Yeah.
also part of what the vendor was saying. I can give them techniques, tools,
Yes.
strategies for how to do that. So I think that one's already wrapped in. Was
So-
there any other area that you identified beyond the kind of recruiting outreach?
Well, I mean, I think that was the focus of their conversation, quite honestly. I didn't really hear a lot about retention and looking at who's leaving. And that's concerning, and really nothing about any efforts to hire people with disabilities, which is a constant issue. We have 250,000 people in this community, so we should have some type of representation for people with disabilities. And
But that's part of targeted and meaningful outreach as well, right?
it is part of targeting, but I'll give you an example. One of the things that really stuck out with me the most in my federal career, and it wasn't something that I was doing, but I had gone to something, everybody was looking for scientists, and I was at EPA at the time, and we were all looking for scientists. And one of the agencies that had great success in hiring scientists in IT. So one of the things they said was, well, we were looking for IT people, and we have to run our data center 24/7. So where do you find people who want to stay up 24/7? You go to these all-night pool places. So you wouldn't think that a pool place is a place that you're going to be recruiting IT people, but they went to the pool place because they found people there who could work these midnight shifts that they had that nobody else wanted to work, and they bought pizza. And they started speaking to people, and they recruited that way.
It's actually pretty clever, because
Yeah.
it sort of like, taps into their lifestyle to be able to determine what the best venue is to, where you might attract these people to go
Yeah,
to.
so it's just kind of out of the box, and Amazon's doing a lot of that. They have these happy hours, and hey, everybody come, find out what's going on at Amazon. They give them food, they give them drinks, a couple of drinks, and they have free classes, and so it gets people there, gets people speaking, people who are looking for jobs coming there rather than responding to a posting. Now, I know there are limitations when you're talking about a government entity, you're not going to have happy hours and things like that, but there are opportunities at local events. Go to Green Valley Day if you want to diversify your population. Go to some of these widely attended events and talk to people about the opportunities that you have. Don't just go to the county fair once a year and say, here are our jobs. That's just very old school and not out of the box.
Yep. Anything else?
Yeah, but I think one has to sort of give at least the department a sort of pat on the back, because one of the things that we have been advocating for years is some sort of centralization of the hiring process. Because in previous presentations, what we were told by Marcy Foster is that she didn't have any control over these things, that it was being done by each of the individual departments. But now what I gathered from her presentation or her response was that there does seem to be some centralization of some things there in her department. So I think that's a plus, and I think we should sort of make that pretty much known to her. But at the same time, when they talked about the interview groups, specifically what she sends to these groups, and I think the impression I got, and help me if I'm wrong, is that when these applications come in, they now go to her department. They're the ones who pick the so-called most qualified ones. So they're making that decision. And then they are now reducing that to a certain number, and they're sending that now over to the interview panel, which is in their various department. But what I thought was a little troubling was that she said, we do delete certain information. And for example, and I think someone has to go back and hear it if she actually said that, she said, for example, from someone from, and it was a historic Black college, they delete that. And the first thing that came to my mind is, why are you deleting information that said that this particular person attended a historically Black school? And she said they were deleting that information if they thought it would be prejudice in some way. So that is troubling. If the department has to delete information as to whether or not someone is Black or someone attended a Black university, that's very troubling. If they think that that information is somehow going to negatively adverse that person when that supervisor or interview panel works, that's also very, very troubling.
Yeah.
So it's something that we
I
want
know
to flesh out
exactly
about
what you're
that.
talking about. I think she was talking about an effort to try to come into more market standard practices and blinding applications from personal identifying information. But I wildly agree with you that I don't think she is implementing best practices. They're doing it manually, right? And this kind of goes back to the point of use the consulting hours with the affirmative action plan vendor who's helping other entities do this across the board so that you're not redacting critical information like what college did you go to, which could be germane to basic qualifications.
Yeah, Helen, I think you should go back here because I heard her say something about bias. So I think that maybe, I'm not doubting that's not a reason that she did it, but also I heard her say a reason that to me was a red flag, and that reason was that she thought it would somehow bias that
Like
candidate.
you heard her suggesting that there was some concern at the
Yeah, I
hiring
think
manager level,
because
if they knew
there
this
was a
person was
question.
Black, they wouldn't hire them.
No, but it was her reference to historical Black.
That's what I heard.
And she may have mentioned Howard University or something.
No, I think you're right. I think she was saying that it was about the bias, and it wasn't just the universities that could indicate someone's race or potentially religion. It was also the names.
Yeah.
There was a name that sounded like Shmuel Goldstein.
So,
Yeah.
and if that is the case, that's a little troubling.
Yeah.
And because it shouldn't be, she shouldn't have to do that, and that shouldn't be something that if it sends over, so it should be troubling. So
Yeah, but then it
we
should
might
be
wanna
done
get a
for
little-
everyone. If you're going to redact one person's name, you redact everyone's name, you redact everybody's name.
Yeah, but I didn't hear that
Yes.
she was selectively redacting. I was hearing that they were blinding the applications to remove any sort of indication that would have gotten to somebody's protected characteristic.
Can I ask a question? I'm still on a learning curve, so I'm not sure I understand the difference between blinding and redacting. Is there a difference?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so they're,
They were concealing certain information
okay,
to the hiring managers that would have reflected on what somebody's protected characteristic was.
Right.
Whether it was age, name, race, religion, national origin. And the
no,
like.
I was just curious as to the terms, whether they
Yeah, I
were
don't think
synonymous
so.
or not.
But I
Okay.
don't think that's an uncommon practice. I
Yeah,
see a lot of companies do it,
but eliminating a school
That's the.
only if it's a historically Black school is, I don't think that that's a
That's
common.
selective, and that's the problem if they're doing it manually. They don't have a consistent process that they're following and some kind of lodestar best practice.
So they're creating a red flag for the manager, because now I'm getting a resume and I see a college blacked out. So I'm gonna make my own assumptions about what that college is. And I might make an assumption that it's Joe Schmo, university by mail. I'm not gonna assume that it's Howard University.
Unless they're removing the name of the school for everybody, right? If that's done.
They would have to do it for everybody.
Yeah.
Right.
And then does
why
that
else
mean you
is the school?
remove it for everybody and you send it to
Yeah.
the interview group and you say to the interview group, you can't ask anyone about this? Because if you remove it from everybody and you send it over there to them and they look at it, so you forgot to include the.
Yeah, but I think she talked about that too, right? It's only to the first.
Is it recorded, this meeting?
No, this is what Anna was just saying. We don't have a recording of it. But I think what she was saying is the blinding goes to the first sort so that there isn't any bias like any implicit bias that can creep in who's eligible. But of course, when you meet with the people on Zoom or in person, it doesn't matter. You're going to know whether somebody is black, white, Asian, what their national origin is in the list.
So the thing is, though, you're disadvantaging an applicant, because if an applicant went to Howard, which is Ivy League school, why shouldn't they receive more consideration? And you're giving them less
This
consideration.
was your question to her during the meeting last.
I'm sorry?
That was the exact question that you asked to
Yeah.
Marcy Foster at the meeting, which was why are you redacting school information? And
No,
she-
actually, that wasn't my question was whether or not blinding and redacting were the same.
No, I'm not talking about your question just
Oh.
now. I'm talking about your question to Marcy Foster in September.
Oh, okay,
In that room.
okay.
You
Oh, that's
asked-
right, yeah.
You asked a question about the school.
Oh, got a better memory than me.
I was taking good notes. She,
Now I remember, thank you for.
yeah, and so she had an answer on it, but I don't think it was a satisfactory answer. But I think, look, all of this to say, they are attempting to implement some of the recommendations. The implementation may not be reflective of best practices, and that's part of the
Yes.
recommendation that we have here. So here's my question. How do we want to convey our recommendation? Because I agree with you, Roland. This is something that would typically come out of the EEO standing committee, not the broader HRC. I know Chris is stepping down. We're going to be pulling in a new vice chair. Chris has some good ideas and process on restanding it back up. But for now, we don't really have it in panel. So do we want to send a communication from the HRC?
Yeah, it would be good if Marcy was able to work with the contractor, because maybe they can come up with something
Yeah.
to help pretty much on this. And maybe the contractor can help so far as IT is concerned, so you wouldn't have a situation, because that was something that Marcy kept emphasizing, doing the whole thing that is done manually. Although I kind of got the impression from her that it differed according to the IT capability of that particular employee. Because some
There was a bit of
employees-
that. There was
Yeah,
some
some
IT
employees could
tracking
do this,
issues.
other employees can't do it, which is a personnel problem that she should be dealing with, because there should be a consistent process.
That's right.
And if she does need some help, then maybe the contract. So maybe
Yeah,
that
and I
should be a
think that's,
recommendation
yeah, that is, that's
that
the
you work
consulting
with the
hours
contractor
with the
on
contract,
this specific thing.
on all of the things. It's on the meaningful outreach, it's on the recruiting, it's on applicant tracking, it's on best practices on blinding applications, if that is, it's all of the things. And that's, I think, what our contractor said, what the contractor said in June, is that I have a whole basket of consulting hours I can give you on how to implement this. So I don't think we limit ourselves at all. I think we just say, talk to the contractor, leverage the budgeted for hours to help them, to have, to help you, the HR department, implement some of these things in a compliant, consistent way. So I think we do that from an umbrella perspective. The procedural question remains. We have recommendations to HR. We conveyed them in the meeting organically. We haven't distilled them like what we're doing now. What do folks think about how we send it? Again, it would typically come through the EEO standing committee. We don't really have a functioning one presently. We'll put that back together. Do we want to send it from the HRC as a follow-up from September?
I mean, there's still time for the committee to meet. When's the last time they met? 3 years ago?
No. Walt held a series of meetings last year before Chris stepped in.
I don't remember seeing any emails about it.
Yeah, he did. I
Did you?
attended,
No, not any.
but I was there, so he did.
I don't remember seeing a report out on it.
Yes, I did, and it was all sent to everybody in the group while I was doing it. So everything was done prior.
That might have been- That's what I'm saying is, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You had 3 or 4 months.
So
where
that
you
all the meetings were
did
posted and emailed, and everything was for Chris to take up on. But that
Okay,
was
yeah.
after.
Okay, yeah, there were a few months when I wasn't on the commission, so maybe I have.
Yeah, we did. So the question remains, do we want to send it from the HRC or do we want to send it from the EU Standing Committee and wait until it's impaneled? Chris, what do you think? I know we've got a few more months of your term. Chris, you're muted. Chris, you're still muted.
Sorry, I have 2 mute buttons I have to manage on my desk, believe it or not. Yeah, I guess I'm curious, not to throw it back, but yeah, it seems like we should send it from the full commission. I don't think, yeah, I don't, you know, yeah, I don't know what the disadvantage of if we have these questions or have more information or want to suggest them. I think we should do it if we want now. I honestly don't think the committee is going to add much because it will be made up of people who are in this room following from, for the most part. And so, yeah, I think we should send it from the commission.
Yeah, and maybe Chris, maybe we do it under your letterhead as vice chair, as sort of the de facto head of the EU Standing Committee. It just so happened that we did it at a broader group. We did not have the employee members present, but I still think the recommendation stands. What do you think about doing it that way on your letterhead before you step down?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Yeah, okay. So would anybody volunteer to take the pen on a draft letter? Fatima, do you want to take a crack at it?
As a newer member of the committee, I'm not sure that I feel confident doing that, to be honest. I'd be happy to work with someone else to do that, just sort of as a first crack.
Okay. Anybody else want to volunteer to work with Fatima on it?
I can volunteer to do it. I was going to volunteer to do the ordinance stuff though, but I can do
Yeah.
both.
Stefan, would you work with Fatima on?
I'm happy to, except I wasn't actually here for the presentation.
Yeah, I'll send you the
but-
bullets. I'll
Okay.
send you the kind of distilled bullets, right?
Sure.
And I think your suggestion of a priority is helpful. So I think the framing of the letter is, thank you for coming to see us. We appreciated the overview. We appreciated seeing some of the progress you've made over prior years, including the point that Roland just made on consolidating hiring practices and breaking down barriers on access to training, which you did talk about at length at first. However, we do as a commission and as the EU Standing Committee perceive some areas of opportunity. One, to implement the consulting hours of the AAP vendor, right? Establish legislative priorities, and I'll send you the bullets I have. That make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
I would
Excellent.
normally, this is my area of expertise, HR, but with me, I'm going in November 1st to Africa, and I have 3 things on the ordinance to do. I just don't have the
Sure.
time to really do it, but I'm happy to review anything if anyone wants to send it to me.
Yeah, I think ideally, if you guys might submit a draft to the group before our November meeting, so we can look at it collectively and vote on it, and we can get it out. We can get it out on the first
How long
December.
of a
One pager,
one pager? Okay. Not sure what the expectation was and how detailed.
just like what I said, basically, and I'll.
Why don't
send
I
it
take a first crack at it and shoot it to you?
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Okay, the last topic I have before we get into kind of the last few bits of it is meetings and how many meetings we have. And thank you all for being here in person so that we can meet quorum. But we do not often meet quorum, right? And we cannot conduct our work. And there's a lot of work that's happening at the committee level. So I think we should talk about it. Right? If we have a speaker, we got to be here. And I will be here. But I don't want to be here when nobody else is in the room. And I don't want to plan my entire week around blocking off my Thursday and not doing other things I need to do only to cancel the meeting at 5 o'clock. I don't think that's sustainable. So my recommendation, and I'd love to have robust discussion about it, is that we reduce the number of meetings to quarterly unless we have an appeal and unless we have a speaker and we do work at the committee level. And I would ask everybody to make every effort where possible to be present during those 4 meetings a year. And one of them gets to be virtual. So it's 3 meetings a year we would have to be here. And we would work collectively to pick a day that works with everybody and we lock it in our calendars. That's my recommendation. Now, I understand from Anna and Gurjeet, we have the ability to set our meetings at our discretion. We don't need to go through CAO to do it. So what do y'all think?
And we can't meet virtually without noticing a formal meeting.
We could. All we'd have to do is notice it. We could not conduct business. We couldn't approve. We couldn't take action, but we could meet and we can discuss and we can hash stuff out if that's more convenient.
Can I ask on that, for the meeting today, other than, do we actually approve those minutes? Have we taken, has any of this been a business meeting that in fact we need a quorum for?
I think we might, if there is an extension, yes, that can only happen if we have a meeting and we have a quorum as we need to. Otherwise, they can't get their extension. So it's approval of minutes, it's extensions. And when we make motions to take some sort of action, and actually, perhaps we need a motion on a letter that we just agreed in concept to send, right? So that we've coalesced around that as a group. That could be an action that we've agreed to.
That was sort of my question before you started to ask it, which is what things constitute actions that require a quorum and a motion versus what are we discussing, what we're going to be discussing.
Definitely extensions, definitely meetings, definitely anything's motions. Now, I wonder, Anna, we had
I see
CAO.
you.
Yeah,
Chris
no,
wants to say something.
Sorry, I just want to I don't want to throw a wrench at things, but I do want to share, and this is, I think, highlights the challenges for a lot of commissions and boards at the moment dealing with the hybrid policy. But in the Tenant Landlord Commission, we were told by county staff, not CAO, but by county staff, that a board or commission cannot meet. Discussion, like, cannot do anything, was what it was explained to us, unless there was quorum in the room. That wasn't from a CAO employee. That is different than what we have heard. So I just wanted to share that. I won't be here next year, but I want to share that. And I think that's part of the strategy for next year. Y'all might want to double check and get some sort of definitive view so that you aren't surprised, because we tried to do that once on the Tenant Landlord Commission. And the director of, I think it was the director of the housing division, was basically like, our guidance is that you all should leave like, you can't proceed with even a conversation, because that's just a way of avoiding, that's just could be theoretically a way of avoiding subjecting discussion that should be public, that is accessible. Although it doesn't make any sense because it's still online, we're being recorded, but I just wanted to share that. I have no opinion on it. I have no idea how this county's interpreting, but that is something that came up when we tried to do the same thing. So I don't know if it worries anyone else, but just wanted to share that.
I have to agree with Chris being on the commission for the development fund for Arlington. We've had the same issue with meetings and quorum. To that note, we were told that we could hold the meeting as long as we don't talk about business and talk about other things. So everybody's getting a different opinion or different comment as to how commissions should or should not do. So I don't know how to resolve this, Helen.
Yeah. Well, maybe sorry, Ron, please.
I think, Chris, I'd be really interested to know if that was the advice on just the staff, or whether that was advice that came from the county attorney. And it seems, listening to Walt, that it's something that came from the county staff, and that it seems to differ pretty much according to various commissions, because I do sit on other commissions, and we do have a lot of meetings which are virtual, and because we don't actually vote,
we don't have any problem because we're mainly discussing and putting things together, and then it's brought at a meeting with a quorum pretty much for vote. So it seems to differ pretty much according to commissions and groups, and maybe this might be something that we should seek a request from the county attorney for something very, very definitive. By the way, I just want to add that there are several commissions which are working on legislative packages to give to our local delegation to present to the state to deal with this particular problem, because this is a concern of a lot of commissions. That is, what is the impact of virtual meetings? And I think, and I can tell you that from what I gather from my experience with some of these, and I am a little bit involved now because I serve on another commission, but meeting with the state senators and the delegates on important legislative matters, that the question of virtual meetings and quorums is something that is number one, and that it seems to be almost unanimous with these commissions that the delegation does propose that the state statute be amended, that it allows for virtual meetings and you can have a quorum using a pretty much virtual meeting. So it is an issue that's pretty much out there. It seems to be done very, very differently, but it's an issue that's out there that pretty much is working to pretty much get it resolved and stuff. So it's.
So I think.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you're absolutely right. The workplace has changed with COVID. People have gotten very used. We conducted business for quite a long time. Virtual, we had good attendance, so I think there's an impact from that. I think there's an impact from the fact that we haven't had a full commission in over 2 years. And maybe we'd have an easier time having a quorum if we had more members. I don't know, but I think there's an impact there. I also think our meeting is not the best night of the week, quite honestly. I would much prefer to have a meeting on a Monday. Thursdays just seem to be a day when everything's going on and people are going out of town for a long weekend. There just seems to be a lot of things going on. I look at my calendar. I'm involved in a lot of organizations. Very few of them ever have a meeting on a Monday. So before going in what I consider drastic to quarterly to improve attendance, I would suggest that we first wait and see what happens if we have a full board. And if we can get some changes to the requirements, I don't see any reason whatsoever that if people are virtual, that they should have less of a vote than someone who's sitting in their room. And then I think we ought to consider changing the day of the week and see if that might make an impact for people. Because I don't know what else is going on in anyone else's life. I know, as for me, I prefer in-person meeting. There are very few meetings that I've had virtual. When I couldn't drive because I had the Achilles tendonitis, that was one. But other than that, if I haven't been at a meeting, it's because I've been away, and I've been away somewhere where I don't have connectivity. So I think it's a question also of what are people's commitment to the commission. If people are here physically in the area and they're not able to make Thursday meetings, then maybe we should look at another day. I don't know. That's just my thought. I just feel like there's way too much work to be done when we have meetings and people are in attendance. We have robust discussions. I would hate to have less meetings, honestly, because I think we could do more if we all come together. Unless we do something else, if we go to quarterly, then we have to have some kind of structure where we have these ongoing discussions on whatever it is we're working on. If we're going to have the Hunter Award again, if we're going to have Tiffany Jocelyn again, if we're going to do these community outreach things, because I don't think we're doing our job if we're saying we're just going to meet 4 times a year.
Yeah, I think it would be at the committee level. Right?
Yeah, I
mean,
would
people
agree
opt
with-
into a
Yeah,
committee,
yeah.
It's going to happen there,
Yeah.
right? Which becomes easier.
Yes.
Those committees can happen, as if I understand correctly, Anna, virtually, right? That's the difference. That's what makes it
Okay.
easier.
Yeah, I would agree with Carol's assessment on a number of points. I think the meeting quarterly, it's too infrequent, and I think that there's to Carol's point, I think there's a lot of work to be done. But more, at least as importantly, I think that memories fade between, you're only meeting every 3 months, whereas meeting monthly sort of, I think, keeps the momentum going. It's harder to sort of pick it up after a certain amount of time. Mondays work for me, so, I'll just, that's fine. Something we might want to consider. Just another question, again, it's a logistical one, about meeting, obviously during the pandemic, everyone met virtually because they had to. And so they made a rule allowing, obviously, commissions to do that. When did they change it back?
Last September.
Okay, so it was changed, it was the Virginia General Assembly, okay.
And then every commission passed the electronic communications, electronic meeting policy. We have one that tracks what every other commission has.
Okay,
Yeah, it was on emergency legislation.
okay,
Emergency.
okay, thank you, Roland.
So
Yep, 7.
I think that there are two separate issues. One is there a critical mass of people that can meet wherever they are? And our law now says if you don't have a quorum in the room, then you can't do that. So that's a different issue than can you meet informally with notice? Doesn't count as a formal meeting, but it complies with the open meeting laws to do a virtual meeting maybe on the other 4 times a year where it's not business. We don't vote on anything, but we have discussions on these things. There seems to be, we met for several years where, well, from when I joined the commission, I think, I don't remember when it was, but there was always, 8, 9, 10 people on those Zoom calls. Discussions were pretty good. So I'm wondering whether we're having a problem because we can't get 6 people in the room X number of times a year. I'm not sure the solution is to go to 4 times a year for only three of which would be in the room is necessarily the solution. If we can kind of jerry rig something else that meets the letter of the law and advances what we're trying to do.
Here's my recommendation.
And one other thing I wanted to add to what Stefan was saying is that, I mean, if you do it quarterly and then you don't have a quorum, then you end up meeting like every 6 months.
I
So,
think that's the problem.
yeah,
That's the
so, I
problem. I think
mean,
Stefan's
I don't
point,
think that's a
We're
solution.
not getting 6 people in the room consistently. That is the problem. And while I agree with you, I would love to be able to participate remotely. I have 4 kids. I work 14-hour days most days. It's a hardship for me too to be here, but I'm here because I signed up to it and that is my commitment. And so for whatever reason, if people are not in the room, we can't do the work, right? And I want to do the work. I want to have as many meetings as it takes to do the work, but I want to get here and do the work and not have to cancel it after already blocking my time and not doing other things. So here's my recommendation, and then I'll turn it over to you. Why don't we try to get county attorney's office in again to have a conversation with us around the art of the possible while we think through this issue? Because status quo is not sustainable. We've already canceled 3 meetings in the past year because we can't meet quorum. I agree with you. We're having some attrition. Chris is rolling off. We've had other attrition. We have some good applicants. We've got to pull more people and that will help, right? But the bigger the commission is, the higher the quorum requirement is too. But we just have to be here. Next November, next month, we've got to be here if we want to conduct business. I don't want to be in a position that Chris is describing of blocking the day, getting here, and then having to cancel it because we can't get in the room. We have to be in the room if we're committed to it. It's part of what we signed up for. We did this before COVID. This is what we got to do. I'll go to you in a minute, Chris.
Very
Steven
briefly,
is up.
I think when everyone signed on to be a commissioner, we agreed that if you're not going to make the meetings, you're off the commission.
Right.
Nobody's going to enforce the rules.
Yeah.
Just people who have other priorities, it's fine. Like, people are all doing great work. It's okay.
Yep.
Enforce the rules.
Fair enough. Point taken. Chris?
Yes, and just as you came to me, my dog started barking. So, y'all can hear me. I'm now. Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm a little paranoid now. I wanna. This is something. Helen. I mean, it sounds like maybe y'all have made your decision, and if that's the case, that's. Having been on other boards and commissions now in Arlington as well, I find more often than not, boards and commissions search for a topic or search for a reason to have a meeting rather than having business to actually conduct. And a number of their meetings every year. I think we're actually really fortunate because of Helen's leadership and staff that we have substantive meetings and have the opportunities for them. But that being said, there have been a number of meetings this year that have been 30-minute, 20-minute procedural meetings. We had no topics whatsoever, nothing to discuss. That probably happened at least, I think we've had a couple of 30-minute meetings, 20-minute meetings this year. Again, I'm rolling off. Part of the reason why I'm rolling off is my ability to meet these commitments is declined because of a new job and other responsibilities. I don't want to stick you all with the situation where I don't show up anymore. And that was where I was heading in terms of my capacity. But I think the commission can have substantive meetings 4 times a year that's maybe 2 or 3 hours and has a density of topics that you can really work through and maybe advertise to the public to come to because it's going to talk about really important things. And I would give yourselves a bit of a break. and that's more than anything, as folks that are going to continue to serve. Every month is a lot. And even the best of planning, everyone in this room, I think, except for Helen, who we've joined when sick, have not been at meetings this year because we all have things that we had to do. And so I would say give yourselves a little bit of grace and try it as a pilot in 2024 and see whether or not it really compromises the ability of the commission to do its work, or maybe it creates energy every quarter because that is an important meeting, that you can cover a lot of ground on. So I would just be kind to yourselves. You all are active volunteers in Arlington. This is a big commitment. I think you can do the work with fewer meetings and have it really still be robust and not put so much stress on all of yourselves to get here after work and after hours and all that kind of stuff, traveling, all that kind of thing. So that's I won't be here. So I know, again, it doesn't matter as much, but I would say give yourself a break, pilot 5 meetings next year or something like. Maybe if you think 4 is not enough, do 5, but it's still fewer than the number of you're doing, and you can see whether or not it makes a difference.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that insight.
Well, I also think the value of what people are contributing shouldn't be measured by whether or not they're at a particular meeting or not. For example, Whitney's not here. I know she's been working very hard on the schools. When Steve isn't here, I know he's working on the ordinance. I know I attend tons of things in the community that are related to human rights. I do a lot of things in the African American community, Juneteenth, whatever. I know Fatima does a lot of things with the Jewish Palestinian groups and she does a lot for equity. So Sean, I know, is in school. So I think he's got a temporary issue right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's got class issues. So I don't think they're people necessarily who, just because they're not physically in the room, it means they don't want to be on the Human Rights Commission or aren't doing good things. But I do think that when I look at the number of things that come my way from different organizations, things that happen on a Thursday, it's like the list is this long. And then when I look at any type of meeting or conflict on a Monday, it's practically non-existent. I might have an Arlington Sister City Association meeting every once in a while on a Monday. So I'm thinking part of it is just, maybe exploring, trying another day or surveying the members to see if another day would be better. That hasn't been the case for me. If I've missed this year, I'm going to Africa, and these are all COVID vacations too, things that get pushed off. And I'm sure I'm not the only person who has things that got pushed off into this year, and now that things opened up.
How about if we send out a poll and just ask people, what works best for you, and then,
Like a Google poll or
I
something.
think that might increase.
Anybody have the capability to do that? Do you have the capability to do that?
I know, I can't say I'm the best techie, I'm not the best at these things, but I think there's there's like SurveyMonkey. I was gonna say MailChimp, but that's for a different.
Yes, please.
Can we table this until next month and see if we can get clarification from the county attorney on what's possible?
Yeah.
And if she says absolutely not, can't have informal meetings, even if they're noticed, then we can't have Zoom meetings. And if she says to do, then maybe we can do a hybrid thing.
Yeah.
I do think that a hybrid meeting is difficult to engage people who are on by Zoom or Teams. I mean, so I'm just thinking, maybe we have 4 meetings in person a year and 3 or 4 meetings by Zoom that are not formal meetings, and we invite the public to them or whatever, but there's no business that's attached to those or separate. But I think we need clarification whether we could do that. And
Anna, can you just one second, can you take that action item to check with county attorney? Can we get a written response that we can circulate to this group before the November meeting?
Yes.
So that we can then come back to it and talk about it.
I think we can, I think we can, send out the poll concurrently. I mean, I just realized I could do a doodle poll if I just have all of the names and email addresses.
Yeah.
It's a snap. I can do it in like 10 minutes.
Why don't you include the questions of what is your preferred weekday,
Okay.
right, for the
Let me,
meeting?
let me write these down.
Preferred day
Okay,
and
preferred
number of
day.
annual meetings. Those 2 questions, and then you can present back the data to us.
Okay.
In November.
All right, well, maybe I'll just can I just if I get it before I can?
Yeah, it's great.
Well,
if you get a
or
window.
what I could do is just put everybody on the list and everybody will get notification whenever people respond, as people
If you could
respond.
get a report, because I think we should.
You prefer that, okay.
Anonymize it. You can
Okay.
it out, that'd be great. So thank you for taking that action item.
Right.
Okay, Roland, you have a
Yeah,
question?
Yeah, a quick question. Are we looking at doing this for 2024?
I think so. I mean, I
So-
think we're locked into our calendar.
Which would be a different board liaison. So they may not want to do this. So that's something I think we really should take into consideration.
Does the
and-
board liaison have an interest in the frequency of our meetings?
I think the board liaison would have a tremendous interest in what the Human Rights Commission does. Especially if that board, is going to be a board member pretty much responsible for it. I think my concern is that how this is going to look to the public, because here it is, you have the major commission in the county that deals with human rights, deals with everything from discrimination on the basis of race and age and sex and income and everything else, and has a broad mandate pretty much under the statute. And this particular group has decided, we're only going to be available to the public every quarter. I think that sends, and this is just my opinion, I think that sends a very, very bad message to the public regarding our commitment for their rights, regardless of whether or not we have meetings that we pretty much 30-minute meetings. I think the public we should get some sort of input, and we should at least get some sort of measurement from entities and groups pretty much in the public regarding this. Also, one of the things that's pretty much big in Arlington is equity.
We see you.
And, is equity. And I don't think that doing this puts us anywhere near equity, because we're not making ourselves more available to the public. We're making ourselves less available to the public. So that's something that the commission, I'll go with whatever decision of the commission, but I think that's something that the commissioners have to pretty much take into consideration. And equity not only deals with the meetings, equity deals with everything from, do we make the commission accessible to people who want to come into the commission? Do we make the filing of complaints accessible to people who pretty much want to file complaints? And the only reason I bring up this is that there are other commissions which have looked at this and have made changes in how they operate in order to be far more equitable, far more appealing pretty much to the public. So I think when we start thinking about limiting people's opportunity to come here, that we should have a far better a discussion as to what pretty much you want to do.
Thanks, Roland. Chris, you've got your hand up. Okay, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi. I agree with you in principle, Roland, that there is a risk of reducing the public's access to the commission. We have not had a member of the public join this commission meeting all year. But and I can tell you, I also sit on tenant landlord commission. As I said, we rarely had, except in extraordinary circumstances, where there are lots of other ways that folks were engaging, like the Serato, that we had more than 1 or 2 public comments. I find that as a citizen of this great nation and county, I find that deeply disturbing that more people do not want to be part of our governmental conversations. But we would not. No one came. Like I think reducing the amount of access to a commission that meets on a Thursday night that is inconvenient to a lot of people that don't come is, again, I love the spirit, but I don't necessarily think that it reflects the realism of the reality of people do not come to these meetings. And so the public will not be at any less of a disadvantage or any more of a disadvantage to coming to an event they already don't come to. So I, again, won't be here. I love the spirit of this, but this goes back to Arlingtonians. We are type A's, and we always want to do more and more and more. But like, Carol, go do those vacations, and I promise you will. The commission, I won't promise, but I'm confident the commission can still have the impact that it's having, and you can go on vacation when you need to. And I think that speaks to, I think, the practicality of what Helen is describing, which is like the commissioners are busy instead of canceling 3 meetings anyway. Again, if we had just taken this year's schedule, 3 of those meetings we didn't do 3 meetings because enough folks didn't show up. So anywho, I just wanted to throw in that perspective.
Yeah.
I disagree with what you say.
I understand.
No. I mean, I agree you have the right to say that, but as one who has attended the past year, a lot of meetings on groups dealing with their housing, human rights and everything, I don't think this commission has a good reputation. I think this commission has to do a lot of work on its reputation with the community. And I think that by limiting the meetings, we further show to the community, who already thinks that some people in some groups that we don't do anything, that they're absolutely right, that we don't do anything. And that's why I differ with virtually everything that you said.
And my comment on that, it was going to be that if you look at our agenda for tonight, for example, it's just a standard agenda. It's not an agenda. There's nothing that, if I were a member of the public, that I would look at and say, oh, I want to come because you're talking about X, Y, Z. It's very standard. It's the director's report. It's this report. It's that report. When we had meetings in the past, where we had agendas out in advance and we had topics that were of interest to the public, we did have members of the public come. So I think that's part of it. People want to know, why am I coming to the meeting?
Carol, are you suggesting that it would be helpful to have more detail in the agenda to allow people to understand better what's entailed and what the discussion might look like?
The agenda used to be published earlier. For starters, a week in advance it was published and it was posted so people could find it. So if a member of the public was interested in the topic, say for example, I bet a lot of people want to come next month and hear what the sheriff has to say. But if we just put out the agenda 2 days in advance, that doesn't give the public notice that we have a speaker coming to speak on a particular topic that may be of interest to them. So the fact that we don't have members of the public coming, I think has to do with not having the agenda out early enough, because we have had great speakers come and talk on topics that are of interest to the public. But if it's not published early enough for people to know what's going on, then people are busy. Everybody here is busy. Not everybody here can make the meeting. So a little bit harder for the members of the public to say, that sounds interesting, I'm going to go to that meeting.
Fatima?
Yeah, I think, I'll just keep it short. I think basically it really comes down to the optics. I mean, to Roland's point, I think And Chris, I fully appreciate, what you're saying, that, you don't think that there's enough interest. And, I think we need to look at, I think you brought up a good point. Maybe that point needs to be analyzed a little bit, and we need to determine why that's the case. Because I think, these are very important issues that we're discussing. So, and I promise to keep it short. So that's pretty much it. I mean, I think it's an optics issue. And I think there is important stuff to discuss, and I think we need to be available to the public. And I think it's an issue to me. Maybe this is my perception entirely, but I think it's an issue of public confidence in our in our being availability. I think would create a higher level of confidence within the community.
One question, Roland, do you recall a more detailed agenda in years past? I mean, I sat on this commission with you for a decade. I don't remember.
Oh, yeah.
agendas.
Oh, yeah.
I don't remember that.
And motions, yeah. Yeah, good one. I mean, not as detailed as some of the commissions I sit on, but a little bit more. And certainly went out sooner. And one of the ways I think in which we can probably get more community involvement is to deal with some of the other commissions doing that, is to put the agenda pretty much on our website. Because then public can go in and they can see pretty much what is there.
The agenda is,
Feedback.
I don't know what I think exactly, but this was one of the meatiest discussions that we've had in my tenure on the commission, in terms of the issues that we talked about tonight. If we had put out an agenda that everybody out there saw, I'm pretty sure no one would have been interested in coming, as opposed to maybe next month, a non-media agenda with the sheriff talking about human rights. Somebody might come. So it's a little bit like, I don't think it's the detail of the agenda that is gonna attract people to come to the commission. And frankly, I understand that that's an important, it would probably behoove us if we could figure out how to attract the public to these meetings, because then it'll help us get the word out of what we're doing or what we're trying to do. But I'm not sure if a detailed agenda is probably the way to do it. Maybe it's, hypothetically, we have quarterly meetings and we have a speaker that comes to each of those meetings for 30 minutes, and that we get a reputation out. They have provocative and relevant speakers that speak to these issues. Maybe I'll come, but I think that's a separate issue.
Yep, thank you for that. Okay, well, anything else on this topic for now? Just to sum up, Fatima, you're going to do the doodle poll.
And I've got the questions that I'm supposed to ask.
Perfect.
Preferred day and number of annual meetings preferred.
Yeah, got it. And then Anna, you'll get a readout from CAO on the informal meeting question from the broader issue.
So what, just to clarify, with respect to the number of annual meetings preferred, I'm going to give two choices.
I leave a blank and let people write in the number that they.
Okay. And I need to distinguish between in-person and just meetings in general.
We have 11 meetings on our calendar right now. Do we want 11, or because we're still going to be subject to our electronic
Okay,
meetings?
so maybe I should give a little bit of context for those that aren't familiar with, or
I
should
don't
or
think we
not.
need to.
Yeah, I
I
don't need
was
to.
just saying,
Okay,
yeah.
no, not
Unless
necessary.
other people
Right,
disagree,
okay.
but I just think you leave a blank and let people write in what they think is
Okay.
the desired number.
How many members are there on the commission right now?
Right now, we are, hang on a second, I should know this. Anna, do you know this off the top of your head?
How many?
Yeah.
6, 7, 8,
10.
9, 10, no,
Maybe how many open spots are?
12.
Well, there's 12 total, so there's 2 opens.
Are we involved, this group, in filling those 2 spots, or is that somebody else that does that?
The board.
Yeah, who makes the determination
The
as to
board
who?
does, the board does.
The
first-
county board?
Correct, and people who are interested complete an application, they attend a meeting, and then they're appointed by the board.
If we can do individual outreach to people,
Yeah.
saying there are 2 slots, you might be a good candidate.
Are there people who
I
are
do
already
that.
before? are there people already before the board is sort of sitting on, or are there not enough applications to go to the board?
Yeah, there was a series of applications months ago. Whitney rolled off, Whitney's term expired. So yeah, we have,
She's not on the board, on the commission
her
anymore?
term expired, I think in.
Oh, okay,
Can she reapply?
I didn't realize that.
I think she has other commitments.
I see.
She's getting married, she's got a full thing.
That's a
Yeah,
big
yeah,
commitment.
she's getting married, yeah.
Yeah.
In addition to running her business, yeah.
Great.
She's got a lot going on.
So yes, we can outreach and yes, we can tickle the board. Yes, we have some work to do to fill.
I know I've solicited quite a number of people I've spoken with, but yeah, haven't been too successful.
Okay.
We did have one who went before the who was appointed, and then he decided to go on the housing commission.
Right.
So,
That's right, that's right.
And was this Brian Coleman?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to review the June minutes that circulated again earlier this week? Any motion to approve?
So moved.
Any opposed? Okay, all in favor? Okay, minutes are approved. No public comment. Anna, Executive Director's report.
We do have one extension. We had a case that's going to expire, but there was a witness that was unavailable to us because of the extended leave they were on. They're coming back, and we want to interview that person before we finish. We need to approve that.
Do we think, how far out, how much time do we need, do we think? Like, is the person coming back imminently?
Yeah, actually, like like next week, but you don't meet again until November, and so we wouldn't have time to finish it before it expires, like right at the beginning of November. So that's.
So this is to give a
Yeah,
cushion in
if
case the
we
person
had
is.
different timing, we wouldn't necessarily need it.
Any other questions on the extension request?
Are we meeting in December since we're not having?
Yes, okay, that's a virtual meeting. Motion to approve the extension.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Chris and Walt, you both are on mute.
Yay for both
They
votes.
can't, they can't vote.
I can't
They
vote.
can't vote.
Got it, okay.
Wait, why can't we vote? Sorry, why? Why can't, don't we have quorum in the room?
That's
Yeah,
true.
no, we don't, we're on camera.
I don't think, so.
So is the rule that you can't vote if
That's
you're,
what we were just trying to figure out.
virtually-
I thought we could.
That's why we need clarification.
Okay.
No,
My
that-
understanding
I
is
can't-
you
I
cannot.
In
On
any-
as-
We will get clarification. on it.
I mean,
The
I don't, I
motion
mean,
passes unanimously with your vote or
Exactly.
without your vote, but we'll
Yeah.
try.
no, this is a relevant point. The
That's
the
true.
tenant landlord commission has never followed that rule. If there's quorum in the room, virtual commissioners can vote and participate.
Yeah.
So
As far as I knew, that wasn't the case, Chris.
I mean, this goes back to, anyway, it doesn't matter.
Chris, that was my operating assumption again as well, but we'll get CAO in and help us decode some of this as we explore the art possible.
But the important thing is disapproved.
Yeah, it's approved. All right, Anna sent around statistical reports about 10 days ago. Any questions on those and on those stats? None?
I want to thank you, Anna, by the way, for coming to all of our meetings and taking time out of your personal life to be here for us. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I do have one more update for you.
Yes, please.
We have a new person, new investigator starting next month. So we're very, 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 very happy about that.
Is that a new position or a replacement?
It is a position that's been vacant for a long time.
Mhm.
It's not a new FTE, but it's one that was reclassified as investigators.
Excellent. What's the total investigator number now?
Including me, that would be 3.
I mean, three.
3.
So are all your slots filled?
Yes.
Okay, member reports. Sean did not have an update on the equality task force, was his email to me earlier today. Anybody else Carol, any reports on the work you're doing? Want to share?
Well, I know I gave a long update last time, so be quiet. I talked enough tonight.
You're welcome to. You have the floor.
Well, I continue to do a lot outside, okay, since you want to hear. Since you want to hear it out there. So I continue to do a lot outside of the commission, which I think is important. Roland has convinced me to become a lifetime member of the NAACP. I'm just a regular,
Oh, you did?
a
Oh,
regular
great.
member, yeah. Yeah, and
Congratulations.
I've done work on the scholarship committee there, and I attend a lot of the activities. And so since the last meeting, I went to the Green Valley Day. And it's very interesting going out and speaking to people and learning so much. There's so much about the history of Arlington, and I'm learning going out to these events, Juneteenth or what have you, and just such a wonderful community. I'm working with someone to have a fundraiser for the African History Museum, and hoping to have that. I'll let you all know about that. So I don't think we used to get a lot of information about all of the activities going on in Arlington, and now I feel like we don't even get the things that are going on in Arlington County. We used to get the Arlington County recognition days, the Latino month, and things like that. And so I get a lot of this information. I don't want to overburden anybody's inbox with it, but I don't see other commissioners there. So, I see Takas at a lot of these events. I think he has a lot of interest in this area and might end up being our liaison, but I'm happy to share information that may come my way, that may not come other people's way. I'm doing things with the asylee and refugee group. Ken Spiker is someone who I know had applied to be on the board, on the commission before. I think it would be really great if he could be on it. So helping to find
That would be
places.
great.
He'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Places for people to stay.
I've worked with him
furniture.
before.
And a lot of these folks are also looking for pro bono legal counsel. So if any of the lawyers on the commission would have an interest in that, I'd be happy to put you on the email list for that. So those types of things have been keeping me busy. I'm not officially the liaison anymore to the Virginia Association for Human Rights, because technically when my term expired, I came off of that position. No one was reappointed in my stead, but I still am active with them and get all the emails. And as I mentioned, we're going to be reaching out to people to get information for the conference. But it's a good place actually to bring up that I know one of the things that Roland had asked about was getting those meetings funded by the county. Because those were all out of pocket. When you go to those conferences, it's
I
all.
testified about that in the past 2 years.
I'm sorry?
I've testified about that in the budget committee meetings in the past 2
Yeah,
years.
thank you.
And I think we've got earmarks for it based upon the feedback, at
Okay.
least in real time. That's what they said, that this is an easy ask. I think you gave me it was about 300 a year, right?
Yeah, it's about that.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what
the
I
hotel,
testified
for
to.
example, is government rate, $119 a night. So yeah, 300 maybe. Well, that's for the cost out of pocket in addition to the membership dues, which it kind of fell by the wayside with COVID because we weren't having in-person meetings. So people stopped talking about that, quite honestly. But I'm happy to continue officially in that capacity. I've been doing it unofficially for, well, I guess since I came off the commission last July. I got a new appointment in November, but technically as of last July, I was no longer the liaison because I was not on the commission. So anyway, those are some of the things that I'm working on. Oh, and I also, on my trip to Europe, I went to that house in concentration camp, and I am working with the county to put on a program on my experience at Mauthausen, which was one of the concentration camps my grandmother was at. And I'll be working with Sheila Buda from Arlington 55 Plus. We have a date, I think May 2nd, that we're going to be presenting the program because she had an opportunity to do this at Auschwitz. So we'll be doing a joint presentation on what we saw and our experiences at the concentration camps.
Do you have a location for the program yet?
It's probably, let me see if she gave me the location, because they had to have it for the spring guide. So I know it's May 2nd. And I'm assuming the last time I did a presentation for them on my grandmother's experience as a resistance fighter for their Jewish history observation, it was virtual, but I think at the time everything was virtual. So I think a lot of these programs, they try to do virtual and in person so that they could post them to their YouTube channel. So let me just check real quick and see if if she has a room for that yet.
But that's wonderful, Carolyn, that's germane also to the work we do here. Anna, if there's a way in which we could leverage the county, when we do some of the outreach that the commission would put on, we would be able to advertise it through county channels. I wonder if.
Yeah, we can share that. We can ask communications to help us with it.
May 2nd, 3 to 4. And she picked that time because she wanted to have a time where it was going to avoid conflict with other programs. So,
Carol, thank you for the update and for all your service.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Keep us posted on the May 2nd. That sounds wonderful.
thank you.
Okay, any other member reports?
Fatima, you do a lot of stuff outside of here.
How much time do you have? Member reports, you mean stuff that I do outside of the commission? Gosh. Yeah, I don't know where to begin. You know, as you might imagine, I think I've already pretty much gone through it, or I went through it, you know, before we started the meeting. Is that, you know, in the last few days, I've just, you know, I've been talking to dozens of people on various, you know, sides of the conflict, and people here, just trying to figure out the best way forward, you know, trying to get away from conversations that assign blame, and sort of, you know, really focus on the solution. And with what I've done, you know, even prior to the last few days, you know, just to conduct symposia, as I think I mentioned online during the pandemic, on how to persuade people to come back to the negotiating table, realizing that the status quo was not sustainable. And so, I mean, that's it in a nutshell. I don't want to make anybody's eyes glaze over, and it's getting late. And I don't know about you, but I haven't had dinner. So I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm happy to go into more detail at another time to the extent that anyone is interested. But that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much for your service and for the
Thank
report.
you, yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've covered our agenda. No other member reports. I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:58. I won't ask for anybody on the screen to make it.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Guys, see you all hopefully in person on the 9th of November. Thank you all for being here.
Except for me, I'll be in Africa.
Can I join?